All right, I'm going to show you a couple of ways to help your third graders and, well, heck, or fourth or fifth graders, but how to help your students visualize multiplication, particularly with our multiplication facts larger than 5, like your 6s, your 7s, your 8s, and your 9s. All right, and so what we're going to do is let's take a look at like 7 times 6. So 7 times 6, I want you to think of that as 7 groups of 6. All right, so what does that mean? Okay, so 7 times 6 means it's going to be 6 plus 6 plus 6 plus 6 plus 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, plus 6 plus 6. All right, so now what we're going to do is we're essentially going to use that distributive property. So the idea is saying, well, we know 5 groups of 6 is easy. That's 30. And that 2 groups of 6 equals 12. So we add them together. 30 plus 12 gives us 42. All right. So the idea would be to help our students say, oh, okay, so 7 times 6, 7 groups of 6 is 5 groups of 6 plus 2 groups of 6, because they're just decomposing that 5 to be 5 groups of 6 and 2 groups of 6. And so now we've got our 5 groups of 6 is 30 plus our 2 groups of 6 is 12, and there's our 42. And if we want to, we could say, all right, we could look at that in the area model. All right, so we could say, all right, well, 7 times 6 is really kind of thinking about 7 rows of 6. All right, so here's our 7, here's our 6, and we can take these 7 rows. Let's say that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Here's our 7 rows of 6. 7 rows of 6. And then we can say, all right, well, that's basically saying take these 5 rows of 6 and then add in our 2 rows of 6 for this big old huge rectangle. So all of a sudden, we end up with 5 rows of 6 and we have 2 rows of 6. So we could think of it as that area model. All right, so kind of making it tidier. Here's our 7 by 6, and we can cut that up right here to make 5 and 2. And so all of a sudden we get 5 by 6 here, and then we get 2 by 6 here, and that's how we could get it. So there's, we've got this whole plethora of ways to show how to represent 7 times 6. And so what we want to do is we want students to recognize each of these ways of thinking about 7 times 6, 7 groups of 6. Now we can create, and I'm going to do it right here, it's kind of like a Frayer model. And basically, I want you to think of your student's paper. So you're going to give your students a piece of paper. They're going to probably put it horizontal like this rather than vertical. And they're going to fold it up into quarters. All right. And then right here in the middle, let's do a little bit of erasing here. Right here in the middle, that's where they're going to write down their multiplication fact. So let's say 7 times 6 is their multiplication fact right here. And then right here, we want to do one visual model. We want to do a second visual model. Down here, we want to write a word problem. And then over here, we want to put the solution. So Your students would take that binder paper, fold it into quarters, write down their, right here, write down their fact that they're going to work on, and then do your visual 1, do your visual 2, write a word problem, and then write a solution. And the idea is these things are going to support each other as our students are thinking. So what does a visual 1 might look like? Visual 1 might be that 7 times 6 is, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 7 copies of the 6, and that 5 copies of the 6 is right here. That's 5 copies of the 6 is 30, 2 copies of the 6 is 12, and there's our 42. That's one visual. Another visual a student might use is that area model, and that area model might look like this. Here's our 7 and our 6, and we're going to decompose that 7 to be 5 and 2. So you have 5 by 6 and 2 by 6. So there's another visual representation. Here's a good one, the word problem. Watching students struggle coming up with something that is multiplicative is really an adventure. Oftentimes students will write a word problem that has to do with addition rather than multiplication. They might talk about, oh, I see 7 toys, and then Joni has 6 toys. How many toys do we have all together? And that's an additive story rather than a multiplicative story. So teachers, as you're watching students come up with that word problem, make sure it's multiplicative. An idea might be, we've got 7 girls, and let me make this go a little faster. 7 girls, copy, paste, copy, and paste. And let's squeeze in one more girl. And then the idea would be, if we have 7 girls and each girl has $6, how much money do they have in all? So that would be an example of a word problem. And then of course the solution, we want to see something along the lines of 7 times 6 is 42. And so this idea, Joe Bowler shared this with me, and it's called the diamond paper is what she calls it. It's kind of like the Frayer model, but it's a way for students to see the same, in this case, the same multiplication fact in a variety of different ways. So I hope that gave you some ideas of a variety of different ways that you can show multiplication to your kiddos. Start this day 1 of school and start with simple facts, 2 times 3, and show that simple fact in those 4 different ways. Visual 1, visual 2, a word problem, and then of course the solution. I hope that helps.